Berlin officials are scrambling to come up with a new budget proposal after residents rejected the first two. Today on the Morning Record, staff writer Devin Leaf-Yessian joins us with the latest. He tells us some of the areas the Board of Finance is looking at for additional cuts and what is the next step in the process. Not surprisingly, tensions are also starting to flare, and some officials are starting to blame each other. Devin tells us more. This is one of two episodes we're posting after missing an episode on Tuesday. Today is May 30th. I'm Mike Savino, and this is the Morning Record. To talk about the latest with Berlin's budget situation, we are now joined by Devin Leaf-Yessian. He covers Berlin for the Record Journal and the Berlin Citizen. Devin, thanks for joining me.
Thanks. Hi.
So it's been a while since we talked, and actually, for those who weren't aware, we actually had a staffing change so that Devin now covers Berlin for us, and our former reporter, Ashley Kuss, who previously talked about Berlin's budget on this podcast, is now handling other assignments on the digital side. So it's certainly been a while since Ashley had joined us to talk about Berlin's budget situation. Since then, we've seen two budget proposals go down at referendum. But fill us in a little bit more about how we got to Wednesday night's meeting to look at some budget cuts.
So after the first referendum was rejected, the Board of Finance drafted a second one at about $44.6 million for the town side and $43.8 million for the Board of Ed. The town council disagreed with that, cut down a bit more, and then it went out to referendum. There was some controversy in the town because before they had even finished that budget, signs went up in opposition to it, saying that they didn't want any kind of mill rate increase, which would have been necessitated by the level of funding that the Board of Finance and Town Council were looking for. That budget was rejected again on May 22nd, approximately 10-1.
And we should note, as we talk about the mill rate for the current fiscal year is 31.61. Conversations about the mill rate are somewhat complicated by the fact that Berlin just underwent a revaluation, which certainly reassesses the value of the grand list. That in and of itself often requires a mill rate calculation. The budget proposal that Berlin was looking at required more revenue from taxes than was currently generated. So that would require a new mill rate, but how that would affect individual taxpayers would also depend on the revaluation, which is kind of why we're glossing over, other than saying that generally speaking it would require additional tax revenue from the previous year. So Devin, what kind of spending increase were they looking at with the second referendum?
So it would have been, I believe, approximately $4 million would be the difference between the old budget and the new one. Much of that was made up with increases with the referendum, with the revaluation, and they actually also in the recently signed budget received a bit more money, about $500,000, which they discussed at the Board of Finance meeting yesterday. They decided to not
$500,000 in state aid.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They decided to not include that because of concerns over the past few years where that amount was not given in full.
Right. For those who don't frequently listen to this podcast, we talk about this a lot with municipal aid, but there's always uncertainty, and anytime the state sees budget difficulties, they cut municipal aid, which is what Devin is referring to. The state recently saw an influx in tax revenue, put money back to municipalities, but certainly Berlin is a little hesitant to bank on that money staying there. So with the referendum going down and also with residents saying through advisory questions that the budget is too high, and that's always the assumption when a budget goes down is that it's too high. What was it that the Board of Finance was looking at Wednesday to try to get to a budget that they think residents will adopt?
They were originally looking to get to a zero mill rate increase. After the finance director came back to them and presented what kinds of things they could cut, and pointing out that in many of the things they'd been looking at, they would have to pay severance if they laid off employees, closing costs, they realize that they probably aren't going to be able to get to that 0 mill rate increase. Things that they've been looking at include cutting out garbage collection, community services, a lot of parks and rec, maybe closing the pool, closing every other street light for night lighting. They've also been weighing the idea of cutting the Board of Ed further, which could mean more layoffs for teachers. They've already laid off 3 teachers and an assistant principal earlier this year. Could affect all classes, some education classes, and especially classes for chronically late students.
So what's the next step in the process? Obviously, they didn't reach a proposal Wednesday night. What are they going to do from here?
So from here, they're having a joint meeting between the Board of Finance and the Town Council tomorrow night, where they're going to go through this list of things they're looking at cutting. And from there, they're having a public hearing on Monday, June 4th, at McGee Middle School, where they're going to invite the public, look through all the line items, people can give their input, and at the end of that, the Board of Finance is looking to go through every line item, decide whether or not they're going to cut it, and then put forward a final budget to the Town Council. From there, the Town Council has, I believe, 5 business days to adopt it or reject it or cut it further. If they can't come to an agreement and the Town Council rejects it, it goes to a joint session where they sit around the table and have to work it out with 9 combined members agreeing on a budget at least.
This is also an interesting process, as we've talked about in this podcast before, for Berlin, because town charter change a couple of years ago has added another wrinkle. The Board of Finance, this is its first year playing a role in the budget process. And there's been tensions between the Board of Finance and the Town Council and the mayor throughout the process. But that really seemed to spill out there, it really seemed to spill over and be on public display during Wednesday's meeting. What happened in particular with Finance Chair Sam Lamaglio?
Well, he has felt that the Town Council and Republican Town Committee, the Republicans on the Town Council have been not adequately supporting the budget proposals they've been passing. He's accused members of putting out robocalls where they essentially said, vote your conscience. Those council members have said that is inaccurate, and all the Republican town council members are essentially saying that they do support the budget. They've also been accused by Sam of essentially trying to pander to both sides, support the budget, but also appeal to people who don't want to see a tax increase, which he says is impossible. Another Board of Finance member yesterday pointed this out and essentially said that Sam was casting the town council in an unfair light, to which he became upset and said that if the town council doesn't want to support their budget, they were going to get a 0 mill increase that he's saying that they want through their behavior.
Sure, and he also will play a clip of his rant in a minute. He voiced all these in an expletive-laden rant lasting about 2 minutes long. So we'll play that now, but again, we want to warn you that there is some language that some may find offensive.
Pass to respond to council.
Well, he could tell just vote. Just tell
No.
them go and vote. That's all he said.
He said,
you,
well,
you have a right to tell people.
No,
go
he had
and
a right-
vote,
no,
Sam. I
he-
mean, everything's turned a negative way. Every time you talk about it, it's really one person's fault. This person's fault.
It is.
Respect the citizens. They voted.
No,
okay?
you cannot respect the citizen when the
Sam.
mayor has not
Respect
done
the
his
citizen.
job.
Forget the mayor.
The
All you're
council,
talking about is
oh
the mayor,
bullshit, the
Sam.
council hasn't done his
Respect
job.
the
No,
voters.
you're
Come
wrong.
on,
You're wrong. This
discrediting
is,
the voters.
no, I'm not discrediting. This is bullshit. The Republican Party wants a 0, and I'm gonna give them a goddamn 0. And if they don't like it, that's their goddamn
Everybody on
problem.
Republican Party
They
said
want a 0.
Sam?
They supported that axe attack sign, and if you don't like it, vote against
Not
it.
everybody.
Bullshit.
Come on, Sam.
Bullshit. They supported sign. I took a lot of crap from these people. They want a 0. They interview you and tell you how you're going to
few
vote.
people said
I
0
know,
to you,
bullshit.
Sam.
The mayor didn't take his budget. No, hold on. Let me make my point. The mayor should have taken a position. If the mayor wanted to be a goddamn leader of this town, he should have taken a position. He did not take a position. And then he asked us to resign the other night. That's bullshit. You want to play Mr. Republican, go ahead. I respect
I'm
you
not
for
being
that.
Mr.
Yeah,
Republican.
you are.
I'm
You're too
just
close to
tired-
the party.
I'm just tired of hearing the rhetoric all the time, Sam.
Then vote no. I really don't care. I want the mayor to get a 0. And then the mayor has to take a stand, because you know what? The mayor has played cutesy with this budget. Well, listen, we provided 2 responsible budgets here, budgets that we were proud of, and we funded the town. And both times, the council, those 4 individuals, irresponsibly cut these budgets, then irresponsibly campaigned against these budgets with their town chair. And you know what? Now they're going to get 0. And if they don't want 0, they could follow the charter and reject the budget. But I'm not going to tolerate to be called an idiot from them, irresponsible for them. You know what? The mayor's called us every name in the book. If the mayor doesn't like the Board of Finance, then you know what? Start a charter revision and get us out of there.
We're being
Bullshit.
We're being cutesy about going.
Kevin, may I ask a question? So the plan.
So what does this all mean, Devin, for the budget process going forward? Do people feel that they're at a place where they can get there quickly, or does it seem like the tension is perhaps becoming too much to overcome?
There was talk at yesterday's Board of Finance meeting of what will happen if this process drags on. There's no timeline of when the town council and Board of Finance, if they go to a joint session, have to walk that out. It could take days, weeks, and if they don't have something in place by mid-June, they'll have to look at either halting some services or issuing temporary bonds to cover the costs of payroll and employees.
Sure. So certainly, it's looking like they really have one more shot to get to get a budget in place. You know, they can get a referendum in the next couple of weeks in June. But is that the sense that really this is the budget proposal that they have to get through to avoid that? And if this goes down, then that's what they're looking at is these difficult scenarios?
Yeah. With this joint session, what they come to an agreement with is the final budget. There won't be any more referendums or discussion after they come to an agreement at that joint session.
Not before July 1. Obviously, they can keep going after that. But
Yeah.
by July 1, then you're running into these problems of entering the fiscal year without a budget. So that's certainly something we'll be continuing to watch. Devin will have a keen eye with what's going on with Berlin's budget, and certainly any updates that come out of these meetings. We'll be sure to have information for you, so be sure to check back at myrecordjournal.com. Devin, thanks for joining me.
Thanks.
Thank you for listening to this episode of The Morning Record. If you like what you heard, you can find us on SoundCloud, Stitcher, and iTunes. Make sure you subscribe to our page so you know when new episodes are posted. You'll also discover all the other great content from the Record Journal's On the Record podcast series. Please give us a rating and review so that others can discover us too. Or cut out the middleman and just tell a friend or two. The opening theme was Ground Cayenne by the Good Loads. All On the Record podcasts are produced by RJ staff.